This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
Hi, good evening to another away end. We get through the last of the international breaks within 2024, and I think it seems for everybody as though there have been more than ever. So good riddance, bring on 2025 and the alternatives in terms of internationals at that point. I am joined today by Ollie from the SalopCast podcast for Shrewsbury Town ahead of our game on Saturday. So firstly, Ollie, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
So we're going into the game, bit of a break for us both. For yourselves, a bit of a change in terms of management, which we'll no doubt come on to. I think Ainsworth going in should do you the world of good, and he's got a bit of a record against Birmingham, actually. So I'm hoping that that doesn't stay the same on Saturday, but we'll discuss that shortly. So interesting history between the clubs over the years. So when we look at our head-to-heads, it is 24 games, but Birmingham, yeah, they've lost 10 of those. We've drawn 6, we've won 8. And when we look at the last 5 games, obviously, do I count the Bristol Street Motors? I really should. Purely for the fact it was the first game for a while.
I wouldn't.
No.
We don't even cover it on our podcast.
Do you know?
We don't even mention the results.
It's scary, really. I mean, it's not called the Bristol Street Motors anymore either, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce the new name. But what we've seen is the past 5 being a League Cup game back in 1994. Along with 2 league games in 1994. And then we have take a big jump into 2006 and then finally into this year with the games that we've played against each other. All of them, I think, being close games. There's none that have really been over the top as far as scorelines concerned. In fact, maximum we've seen is 2 goals in any of those games. So we go into Saturday after an international break, looking at, like I say, the change of management at Shrewsbury. So tell us a little bit, first of all, before we go into the game, about your podcast and the name. The name intrigues me.
Yeah, so I do notice you never mentioned the 12 games you didn't beat us between 85 and 91.
I try
that
not
just seemed to. Yeah, that just skipped your memory.
Completely skipped
12 games where you didn't beat us, which is quite funny, including a nice 4-1 win at St Andrews. Would it have been called St Andrews back then?
I mean, it was, yeah. It would all have been. It's always St Andrews to us, even though fine. We had the at Knighthead Park now, but it's still St Andrews.
Yeah, cool. So, SalopCast. So, you might hear, or you should hear, Shrewsbury Town fans chant the word Salop at the game. And Salop, Shrewsbury being quite a posh town, so we've got a posh chant. And Salop is a Latin Roman name for the area for Shrewsbury. So actually, in the 80s, people would have wrote Salop in kind of the place of Shropshire as well. But really, it represents the area around Shrewsbury, so that's why we kind of got it from. So yeah, so Salop is we often call ourselves Salop, and obviously it's a lot shorter than writing Shrewsbury. And we got the Blues. We're not really the Blues. You guys are the Blues. So yeah, so everyone, especially in the kind of modern social media era, everyone's always called a Salop. Even the club will do #Salop. And yeah, me and a friend Glyn started the podcast nearly 10 years ago. I think we were like one of the first podcasts in League One. We've been in League One the whole time. So yeah, that's where the name comes from, and it works quite nicely for us.
Thank you for the insight, because it did. I've got to say, it did intrigue me. I've seen some great names of podcasts, but this was one that really stood out. So tell us a little bit about the weekend then. So obviously, I'm not going to dwell on the league positions, because the league positions, yes, they say they never lie. However, this league is incredibly, incredibly open. I think people assumed that teams would just go and run away with it. Birmingham being one of them, and it's not the case. And for me, it never will be. It's an FA Cup final each time you play a team that is spending money or has been relegated from the other division and is looking to automatically get back up. So, the league doesn't lie, but I don't think it's a true reflection of where things are at the moment. And you never really see it really until Christmas to know exactly, where you think people will finish. But obviously a bad run for yourselves. Tell us a little bit what you think that's around the change of management that's come along. What's your thoughts around Gareth Ainsworth and the team that he's brought in? And also tell us a little bit about the team, what to expect. The Bristol Street Motors for me, there's a group of youngsters, and I think you had multiple players out injured at the time as well. So you never had a chance to field a full strength.
I didn't even watch the game. It's an irrelevant game for us. Didn't even watch it. Don't even remember who played, to be honest. Season, maybe just going back a little bit. So you remember Steve Cottrell? Interesting. How could
we forget Steve Cottrell?
Yeah, I won't swear on the podcast, but I'm not a big fan.
Nor are Birmingham fans, don't worry.
He was, and the club, when he was here, the club overspent. So then we got into quite a bit of debt for a club we didn't have a rich benefactor, unlike you guys. So we got in quite a bit of debt. Last 2 seasons, we've been cutting our cloth accordingly. And this year was the first kind of first time in quite a few years where our budget has been cut quite significantly. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have as much money to spend this year. And then on the back of that, we've recruited really poorly. And we've got a bunch of players that are less than the sum of their parts.
Yep.
And to be honest, the senior pros should be ashamed of themselves with the performances so far this year. They got Paul Hurst sacked, who was a manager who was a great affinity with Shrewsbury Town fans in the greatest season in the last 10 years, 2017-18. We had Dean Henderson on loan, Ben Godfrey on loan, Carlton Morris on loan, and then obviously a player obviously you guys are familiar with, Matt Sadler, in centre of our defence.
Indeed.
And we had 3 players there, Ben Godfrey alone went for 40 million to Everton. So we had 3 Premier League players in our team with some old guys and a couple of other young players in our team. We just did fantastically well. Paul Hurst came back, couldn't really kind of recreate the magic. He made quite a lot of mistakes, I think, as well. Team selection, obviously, he's heavily involved in recruitment in the summer, and we're in a bit of a bad situation now. Obviously, sacked. Our chairman is incredibly thin-skinned. Shrewsbury Town fans were chanting. Basically, chants about the chairman, and then I was quite surprised that Paul Hurst got sacked on a Sunday, and then quite quickly for Shrewsbury Town. We actually then got Gareth Ainsworth. And to be honest, most Shrewsbury Town fans are quite gobsmacked we managed to get a manager of his calibre.
Yeah.
Because we expected to get either a untested coach with potential, which I don't mind too much. Look at Ipswich and some other clubs have done quite well.
Exactly,
that route. You guys are doing pretty well with an untried coach. I quite do like that approach. I think it's not necessarily a bad one. But then we got Gareth Ainsworth, and I think a lot of people on the outside probably know why we've got Gareth Ainsworth. Why is he come to Shrewsbury? When you look at the league position, we've been in League One for 10 years. We're the longest serving club in League One. Most of the time been in the bottom half. But there is a lot of rumours that we're going to have a takeover soon.
Yeah.
Which I think has attracted him to the project. And to be honest, like the culture, God, if I could talk to the players, there'd be a lot of bombs in that conversation. The players are so let down. They've been so atrocious. And then Burton, so we've got Steve Parish, who's a West Midlands coach, been at Wolves and quite a lot of clubs. He took the team against Burton, and it was one of the worst performances I've seen in the last 20 years. It was absolutely atrocious. So to get Gareth Ainsworth in, a manager who is renowned for his culture, his man management, and probably giving them a bit of a rollicking, he's perfect for us. And the great thing is, I expected us to get a short-term manager. because the takeover was coming, he signed an 18-month contract. But interestingly, I get the sense that he's come here for the long term. He hasn't come here for 6 months, the end of the season, or even next season. I get the sense that he's come here for a long-term project.
So do you think
and gives us a bit of hope.
An appointment potentially of any new owners that are coming?
Yeah, he must be, because he spoke. So like it's quite fun for us. Obviously, you guys are a bigger club. You get more. I've had multiple podcast approaches and stuff. It's always funny. We're the only fan media. There's a blogger for Shrewsbury and one podcast. That's why I always joke we're the number one Shrewsbury podcast because we're the only one. So he's quite good because he brings us a bit more coverage, and he was on the BBC EFL podcast last night, and he was talking about the project and the takeover and how exciting it is. So it does seem like he's here for long term. So hope. Shrewsbury Town fans have had no hope. For the last 3 years, we scored less than a goal a game. So Birmingham fans might cry about your season in the Championship. I've got no sympathy at all. So for the last 3 years, we've been absolutely atrocious. We've won 3 games at home all year. We averaged less than a goal a game, and we've been absolutely dire. And it's been, really painful watching Shrewsbury Town. And Gareth Ainsworth is the first bit of, Paulhurst coming back was quite fun at first, and we were quite hopeful. But we went back to kind of reality bit quite quickly. So Gareth Ainsworth and a takeover gives us a bit of glimmer of hope. And if ever, and Gareth Ainsworth said it himself, playing Birmingham City, who have signed a player with a transfer value 3 times our turnover, it's a perfect opportunity for us to shit house ourselves to 3 points.
Yeah, do you know, at the end of the day, this is the thing with this league as well, is yes, we've been out and spent a bit of money, but it's the team.
Still 11v11.
It's still the 11 you're up against, and it's how they set up and how they feel on the day as to ultimately how that result.
And League One has come on so much.
League One's incredible.
League One has come on so much in the last 10 years. So it's like a silly thing to say. If you'd have put a League One player next to a Premier League player like 10 years ago, just physically, you'd have looked at them and gone, well, he's a bit chubby, whatever. He doesn't look.
Yeah.
And Shrewsbury Town have GPS tracking. They have cameras on stands at the training ground. We've got a very good training ground now. Mm-hmm. Dietitians, all that stuff. It's all there now. And obviously the tactics. We've got analysts as well.
Yep.
So it's the kind of there's been a lot of leveling, and that's why you saw Sunderland down here for years, Derby down here. Derby never beat us. Sunderland, I think, maybe got one decent result against us. And it's a tough division, as you're going to find out. And potentially you'll run away and get 100 points, which you might do. But there's been, as you know, there's a lot of teams that have been down here for quite a while.
There is. Tell us a bit about what to expect on Saturday.
Well, I don't know. That's the fun. It's the fun part, is because Gareth Ainsworth said in his pre-match that the players need a really clear plan. We can't keep, because Paulhurst started playing the season 4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
Then because we were shipping goals, reverted to a back 3, which worked. We went to Bolton and nearly won, which is forgotten. And we picked up a couple of points, beat Crawley 5-3 away. We actually beat Crawley 5-3 away, playing 4-4-2 in the end, because they went down to 10 men. So I've got absolutely zero clue what he's going to set up us on. Obviously, Gareth Ainsworth, I spoke to quite a few Wycombe fans. Over the time, he played 4-4-2, he played 3-4-3, he played 3-5-2, 4-3-3. He played everything in the 11 years he was at Wycombe. So I imagine he's going to come to Shrewsbury and play the formation he thinks is the best for the squad until we get to January. So I've absolutely no idea. But if we are having a takeover, and a few things he said on that EFL podcast, he said the players have got a chance to basically stay with Shrewsbury. So in some ways, they may be effectively playing for their careers. And if we do have a load of money coming in, players on $2,000 a week ain't that expensive to ship them off.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So it's really exciting. It's a great game to have. Obviously, a Midlands game. You guys are going to bring a load of fans. Shame it's at 12:30, but I literally have no idea, and I'm actually quite looking forward to it. And I haven't been looking forward to Shrewsbury game. It's been a chore, even watching it at home on Sky.
So Birmingham that is the last season.
Yeah, and that feeling's like when you're watching your team and you would predict that 95% chance you're gonna lose and not even score. That's what's been
Yep.
like for us.
And so obviously you can't predict how they'll line up, but players, they're still the same 11 probably that will start the game
Yeah,
as what ended your last one. Just with a different, ethos, what it
yeah.
worked on the training ground, etc. But player wise, who should we look out for? And why? It's
Yeah.
always a good question.
So in terms of like talent and ability, we've got a player on loan from Chelsea called Castledine, who's a number 10 or midfielder. Interesting. Chelsea say he's a box to box, but we played him as a 10. But
Yep.
obviously, that's how happens, isn't it? When you have a player who's quite talented, he's a good player, and also got a player on loan from Aston Villa as well. So the
Oh, you
Aston
can't say
Villa
that on
loan,
here.
Aston
Can't
Villa
say that.
loan manager was a Shrewsbury Town analyst. So we got O'Reilly on loan, but probably the most standout player is a player called Josh Feeney, who's a centre back, who's from Villa as well. So we've got two Villa players play in the team, but O'Reilly's been nowhere near the first team. I think he's a bit young. I'm not sure if he doesn't really track back, and if you're bottom of the league, this doesn't really work.
Yeah, you
So
just need to be solid, don't you? Not
yeah,
ship the goals.
yeah. So there's some young kids to keep your eye on. A really interesting one's going to be Carl Winchester. Carl Winchester played every game pretty much for Sunderland when they got out of this division, and he's been absolutely dog shit this season. And he's our captain, and he's been awful. So, but he's a decent player. Be interesting to see what we can get a tune out of him. And then other than that, maybe a striker, George Lloyd, who's like 5'9", 5'10", but he really does put himself about.
Yeah.
I've seen him bully some like 6'4" strikers. It's quite funny. So he's someone to keep an eye on as well. But it's really hard because like we've been down in the dumps. We think that we're going to get relegated. I consigned myself to relegation like after like I don't know 6 games because you just see the team, don't you? And you go like,
Yeah.
well, we're crap, and there's no effort, and we're just awful. But trying to be optimistic, maybe Gareth Ainsworth can get a tune out of them, and maybe he can turn them around.
Yeah.
Saying that we'll probably lose 4-0 on Saturday, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he can do. We've got 7 or 8 games to the January transfer window, and it's been fascinating to see how the players respond.
I guess what you want to see really from your players.
Just running.
Yeah, it's the same
Like
with what we saw out of
we're
Birmingham.
playing Burton away. Our captain Carl Winchester didn't track his runner, and he just tapped into the back of the net. Like basics, like the basics of basics, and not even just basics for Sunday League teams. If you're playing on Sunday League, and you'd have a go at your mate for not. These are professional footballers who have, and some of them have played at a higher level than League One. And yeah, we're not doing the basics at the moment. Like I don't like the phrase "lost the dressing room," but something was not right, and that's where Paul Hurst went. Normally, managers get sacked, don't they, when they like the board don't think they've lost the player. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Obviously, Ainsworth has had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, so it's going to be really interesting to see what he's done with his assistant Dobson. Who obviously those guys have got a record of saving teams because obviously saved Wickham from relegation. He saved well. Some QPR fans say that he didn't really do anything when he was there, but technically he did keep them up.
Well, I was going to say kept him in the league. So this is the thing. You might need the elements of stability to keep you in the league to then be able to build on to hopefully, like you say, that new owners and a fresh way to look at the way the club is run. So I mean, we come into the game on Saturday. Obviously, Birmingham not with the best result in their last game. Disappointing to concede with almost that last kick of the game, you could arguably say, but we didn't put chances away, and that was our downfall on the day. I'm hoping that Chris Davies will have them singing from a proper decent hymn sheet this time around, and that if we get opportunities, we do put them away. And I don't want to say go out and punish teams all the time because this league is not like that. It's not like it at all. But it'll be just nice to see a stable game, should we say, from our front. But I also feel as though the new manager bounce and the fact that if the players haven't been performing, Ainsworth won't hold back. He will put a rocket up their backside. So they should be fired up to come into this.
And it's going to be so we average six, and I do inverted commas, 6,500, 6,800, but there's been nowhere near 5,000 in this, like maybe 5,000 in the stand.
Yeah.
But we'll be sold out on Saturday.
I mean, Birmingham's giving a good following as well. Like you say, strange one on the kickoff time. It is a very strange one. I believe it was moved by the police rather than anything else, which can only be down to the fact that our local rivals are playing at home as well, and they just didn't want the teams in and around the area at the same time. But still baffles me. There's no animosity between Birmingham and Shrewsbury fans, so that can never be put there. But 12:30 it is. Hopefully the game goes ahead and we're not interrupted by the poor weather. So, right, bit of a challenge for you then. I do this to everybody that I do the away end with, and the challenge is to name 5 players that have transferred between the two clubs across the years. That can be either a permanent transfer or a loan, or players that have represented both clubs. You've obviously mentioned one already.
Yeah.
I'll say I'll let you have him because we do like him, and he's also a friend of Tilton Talk as well. So it's a definite one there. But can you name any others? So I'm looking for 4 more that have represented both clubs, and I've got quite a list over the years. Some names I don't recognise, whereas others definitely stand out.
Thought of one more, maybe. So Matt Sadler.
Yep,
he was a legend at this place. And when we sacked Paul Hurst, I was hoping that maybe we could steal him from Walsall, but I think that's probably given where we are. We could easily take a manager from League Two. We've done it before, but obviously he's on to a good wicket there, so I don't think he'd move to the bottom of the league.
He's
One,
flying
maybe mid-table.
Flying Walsall at the moment.
Yeah, he's great captain for us. Superb player. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. He's a good bloke. So he's one, and then David Davis.
Indeed, David Davis,
another one.
Yes.
Yeah, so he played
a lot of
games
to you under the Cottrell years, didn't he?
Yeah, he was crap. He wasn't that much. He did a bit of a job in midfield, but he wasn't great for us. And other than that, I genuinely can't think of anyone. Obviously, the funny one where Joe Hart was rumoured to go to Birmingham at one point, but he didn't. And thank God he didn't, because we got £1 million from Man City when he got a one England cap. So that's a funny little story. But I can only think of Matt Sadler and David Davis. I'll kill myself, I'm sure, when you tell me some of the other names.
You will do with some of the names, because in and around the same time. In fact, I think it was the same season that you got Digger Davis. You also got Sam Cosgrove on loan, who
of course.
Never hit the ground.
He's the worst loan player in the history of Shrewsbury Town.
He's probably one of the worst players ever to turn out for Birmingham.
And it's really funny. One of the guys who does my podcast said that Sam Cosgrove's transfer to Birmingham has to have been money laundering.
There's something behind it, telling you. It's definitely.
And then luckily somehow we got rid of him. Literally, he's literally the worst loan player we've ever had. He was that bad, and he was on like $9,000 a week at Birmingham, and somehow we managed to get rid of him to AFC Wimbledon.
It's going to be a good one. Another loan transfer came to you twice, actually, was Kwasi Asante.
Okay.
So he was with you. You also had Asa Hall as well.
Yeah. Asa Hall, he was all right for us. Yeah. Back in the days when you could have mini loans, like three game
youngsters and everything else.
Yeah.
You also had midfielder Richard Scott in the 94-95 season. Then a true legend at Birmingham, and I've got to say, probably one of the fastest players I've ever seen play football. 93-94 on loan against yourselves was Louis Donowa, and he was an absolute.
I don't recognise that name, to be honest. I was 7, so that's my excuse.
Well, if that's the case, you may or may not know this one, because this guy still to this day follows Birmingham all over the place. Home and away, without fail, will be at Shrewsbury on Saturday. And again, he's a true legend at Birmingham, and that's Robert Hopkins. A story that will always be told with Hoppy is that he was across the city, but would go to training wearing his Birmingham City badge around his neck, and then when he got his opportunity to move, he obviously did. Going back then many moons, we've got Dougie Bell, centre midfielder that moved in 89-90. Dave Geddes in 86-87. Jerry Daly in 85-86, and then really.
I presume that these days they moved to Shrewsbury because they wanted to beat Birmingham. Because
probably was because those are the times when you was on your run, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this, but yeah, Shrewsbury Town were in the Championship for 10 years.
This is the thing. There is history.
Yeah.
I mean, the furthest we can go back, and that I found in terms of player transfers, was 1960-61, and Jim McLaughlin, Gainer centre forward. So it tends to be that when you look at the players that have transferred between the clubs, you like a lot of our midfielders, and you've liked a lot of strikers. So, right, we can then. So we come into it, like I say, after the break. Tell us what your heart says and what your head says in terms of the result at the weekend.
So my head says it's going to be I don't know, we'll make a terrible mistake in the first 15 minutes and the whole thing will just burst. It'll be incredibly demoralizing. Then you won't even really try and you'll win 3-4-0. But my heart says that you'll hit the post, the crossbar, and the referee will do some dodgy decisions our way. Your fans will whinge for months about the referee and it's not fair.
Yep.
And then we'll score from a corner where we knock your goalkeeper over and score 1-0 in the 92nd minute. That's what I hope happens.
I mean, I've got to say, based on the way that the performances are at the moment, for me, it is. If I take the Bristol Street Motors game, we played really well, possession, which has always been a factor with the games moving forwards now. And I think if we get an early goal, it could be 3, could be 4. But that's what my head is saying.
And I would definitely agree with you if we hadn't changed manager.
And this is the thing.
And that's the wild card.
And I think this is going to be a factor on the day. I'm still going to say that I think Birmingham will win the game. But
you should do, considering
you will give us a fight. You will give us a fight. And that team should be up for it under a new manager. As you've already mentioned, they're playing in effect for their positions for the next few weeks. But arguably, they're playing for
none of them will play League One.
Yep.
If they fail from Shrewsbury, and you've seen this before, if you could end up, God knows where you could end up if we let them go. Some of them might not even end up in the Football League anymore.
Indeed, and it's what everybody you've got. By the sounds of it, something that's going to be aspirational for the club to look at and move forwards with in terms of new owners, and all of this should be a key factor for your players to take out. But I'm still going to stick with. I mean, I will go with a 2-0 win. If we score early, it could be more because I just think it'll be your heads will drop, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm sticking with 2 because I think it'll be a tough game. I know we were down there quite recently, but it's going to be a good one. It's a 12:30. It's a Saturday afternoon. It's going to be wet. It's going to be windy. It's going to be perfect football for me, or footballing weather when it comes to it, for when you've got 2 teams that want to really, show what they can do. And looking forward to it. So thank you very much for joining us on the away end. We will definitely do this again when it comes to the return fixture at St Andrews at Knighthead Park. But on this front, I shall just say thank you very much again, Ollie, for your time. Here's to a good game at the weekend. I wish you all the best for the rest of the season, but I wish you have the worst game possible on Saturday. And thank you very much, and keep right on.